Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Boot Nerds podcast. My name is whatever it says in the corner of the screen, and I'm here with my good friend JayMike. What's going on?
Hi guys, happy to be back. Another week, another episode. It's gonna be fun. I'm gonna try and keep the intro short this time because I got some stick off of YouTube because my intro was too long. So make sure you like the video. Make sure you leave a question in the comment section right down below. Make sure you tell your friends, your mom, whatever, to go subscribe, ring the bell, and yeah, let's get it rolling.
Yeah, and audio-only versions available at bootnerds.com. All the streaming services are available. Go ahead and check it out.
What he said. But guys, today we are of course talking about Tiempo Legend 8. It launched in the beginning of the week. It comes out in this relatively smart black, grayish, blue colorway, and also this super crisp white colorway. Of course, it's a brand new boot. It's not just a facelift that we've been kind of used to from seeing from Adidas and Puma. But it's a brand new boot. Just to quickly run over the tech features here, it has a new 3D pressed upper with this diamond-shaped pattern inspired by a quilted leather upper. Then it has Quadfit mesh underneath the leather, this technology that kind of tightens up whenever you apply pressure to it to keep your foot in place. And then it has what Nike call a fly knit tunnel underneath to give you a nice seamless transition from boot to foot in a good fit. And then it has the same outsole as Tiempo Legend 7. So we both tried the boots, right? What do you reckon? Wow. Okay.
That's not a good start, right? It's not a good start. Okay. I'm disappointed with what it ended up being in general.
Right.
But, and we talked about this a little bit already, I think it's objectively a good product. When it comes to pretty much every possible performance characteristic in a football boot, it does everything pretty well. But for me, what has always been the appeal of a kangaroo leather football boot, which this is, and which the Tiempo line has always been, is that special touch on the ball. And I feel like the specialness is not there with the Tiempo Legend 8. And you could argue it wasn't necessarily there with the Legend 7 either. But the Legend 8 strikes me as a boot that's really good, but they're trying too hard at this point. They're trying to make the Tiempo something that it's not. And that's my problem with it.
And I completely, wholeheartedly agree with you here. I mean, they've tried to make the Tiempo Legend something it's not, and they sadly succeeded in doing so. I mean, this to me feels like, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, it feels like a beefed up, wider leather version of, well, the Mercurial and the Vision to some extent. It just feels like something we already have from Nike. It doesn't feel like that unique leather experience you got with, to some extent, the Legend 7, where the leather here was still, plush. It was still soft, and it moved freely with the foot. But with the Quadfit mesh here, it restricts the movement of the foot and of the toes, especially, so you can't really wiggle them to the same extent you can in a, should we say, classic modern leather boot where the leather sits on top of some foam and then a liner, so it's directly in touch with your foot. Here it actually sits on top of the Quadfit mesh liner, and it just means you can't really, even though the leather is, as you can see, it's ridiculously thin. It's super, super soft when you just have it in hand. And when I got it in my hand, I thought, okay, this is going to be good. But then I got it on my feet and thought, this feels more like this slightly restrictive, crammed in, super tight sensation you get in a Vapor. And that was just a really weird sensation, having that in a Tiempo modern leather boot.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, you hold it in your hand and it feels really good. Then you put it on your foot, and there's two things that really surprise me. One, there are so many layers of material between your foot and the leather that it doesn't necessarily have the feel of leather against your foot, which I think is totally backwards for this style of football boot, right? When you put on a nice leather boot that you've paid $200+ for, it should feel plush. It should feel like there is leather, the nicest, softest material money can buy, wrapping your foot. And you don't get that sensation. Instead, you feel Quadfit mesh and you feel this Flyknit tunnel thing wrapping your midfoot, adding yet another layer between your foot and the leather, which, again, leather boots are supposed to be about simplicity and purity. And this is everything but that.
And let me again stress that this is not a bad football boot. In fact, I think it's a very good football boot. It's just not a very good modern leather boot, if I can put it like that. You know,
no, it is a good modern leather boot, but if you're basing your opinion of what a leather boot should be on what has been done historically with leather boots, it doesn't do that. What's special about those boots that have come before it, this does not have. Objectively, it does everything well. On paper, it's a better boot than the Tiempo Legend 7, but it's missing something.
Exactly, and this is my point. I kind of also dive into that as I end the review on the Unisport channel, that for me, it's a boot that's really difficult to hate on because it fits well. The touch is relatively nice on the ball. It's pretty sharp and it feels good. There's nothing in the way with that. The fit is nice. The Flyknit color is very comfortable. It might be a little bit too much in the way in the midfoot, but that's how it goes. But it feels very good. It's super comfortable, relatively light. There's not much to really hate about it, but then for me, it just feels like this goes from sitting in like its own area of the Nike boot offering, and then it kind of goes away from that and jumps straight into the mix of the Phantoms and the Mercurials, and it just wants to take part in this big offering of boots that offer more or less the same thing already. And it's just such a saturated area already that we don't need another boot in there while losing the uniqueness of the Tiempo. Does it make sense?
No, I get what you're saying. I think the Tiempo has been the last holdout within the Nike brand for simplicity. And the Tiempo Legend 7 that this boot replaces is far from simple, but I think you can look at that boot and every single element there serves a purpose. The kangaroo leather is for softness and for touch. The internal support cage adds structure to the leather. The fit mesh liner in the toe box area, which I think we can I just thought about this yesterday, is kind of like an early look at Quadfit 2 years ago, because it kind of is the same thing, but it served a purpose. The Flyknit tongue served a purpose. The flywire cables, there for structure. Like everything was there for a reason. Then you look at the Legend 8 and you have this diamond pressed material, the diamond texturing doing absolutely nothing. It's just
true.
It's
true.
just there to look cool. That's all it does. And if anything, it takes away from the softness of the leather. Then you have this Flyknit tunnel thing through the midfoot, which Nike stressed was a comfort element. They found that through their testing that it made for a more comfortable fit when you had this kind of tight sock-like material wrapping the arch of your foot and kind of hugging it, if you will. But you're just adding more bulk. You're adding more layers of material. It's not really improving the comfort, in my opinion. It's just changing up the feel, but in more of a negative way than a positive way. So that's two of the main elements on this brand new boot that realistically don't help the performance. They're just there for the sake of being different.
What really bums me out is as I mentioned earlier, that the leather kind of floats freely on top of the Quadfit mesh. Because as you also said, one of the unique things about a leather boot is that you actually feel how the foot is more or less connected to the leather, if you know what I mean. It basically is because your foot can directly manipulate how the leather molds around your foot, depending on how you move it, how you move your toes and all that stuff. Every little movement you make with your foot, the leather reacts to that, and you basically feel like it's really in touch with your foot directly. But with this, because there's this little gap and the leather can move freely and thus doesn't sit exactly on the same spot over your foot every time you move it, it just feels somehow disconnected in a very weird but sharp, clean way on the balls. It's a very confusing experience to me, because going out there, feeling the leather is very soft and then feeling a little bit more disconnected with the ball than I I think I would expect from a leather boot. I mean, if we look at, and we'll go into the comparisons later, but if we look at a boot like the Copa 19 Plus or the Mizuno Regular 3, which are thicker leather boots, it just still feels somehow more connected to your foot than this, and that's very weird.
Yeah, you're right. I think the comparison point is a good point, because I think if you've never worn a leather boot before, you could put on the Legend 8 and be very happy with how they feel, because it is a comfortable boot. I think it's more natural feeling because there's less structure to the upper due to that Quadfit system versus something like a Legend 7. But if you've worn leather boots that are really high quality and on the same level as a top-end Tiempo, you will get that kind of disconnected sensation. I think the appeal, and the way I've always kind of said this is why you might like a kangaroo leather football boot, is once it's broken in and once it's molded to your foot, it's like having a leather sock. The industry's all about sock boots now, but leather boots are the original sock boots. The way that they're able to mold to your feet and wrap your foot is the reason why the sock boot concept kind of came about, and you don't get that sensation with this new Tiempo, which is a total shame.
And this is maybe, you know, I'm just realizing this now, that while I love Quadfit mesh, and I think it's perhaps the most functional Nike innovation since Flyknit, I actually think it works really well, and it has an actual purpose, right? I also don't maybe think it was the right choice to put it on the Tiempo because of what it does. Like it has a very specific purpose, and it does that specific purpose extremely well. But you know, you also don't. I don't have an analogy to fit it, but it just feels weird to put something so focused on lockdown and responsiveness on a boot that's supposed to move more naturally and freely with your foot. I simply don't get that decision. It's just like Nike looked in their toolbox and said, okay, we can do this 3D printing pressing thing to the leather that's already very soft. It's going to look super cool. We have this Flyknit technology. We could do whatever we want with it. Let's make this tongue thing because that's probably great for comfort. And we also have Quadfit mesh. That's extremely cool. It works very well. Let's just slap it all together. It's probably going to work. It just feels a little bit like Nike didn't really know what to do with the Legend 8. It ended up a very good boot. I'm not going to lie. I like it a lot. If I didn't know any Tiempo, if they'd call it something else, the Nike Übertouch 3000, hey, maybe I'd have looked at it differently and just enjoyed wearing it for what it is, because it is a very enjoyable football boot. But it's just not what I expected and wanted it to be. And I think a lot of people feel the same way.
I think you made a fair point in saying that Nike seems to have this focus lately where every boot they come out with has to be the best of the best in every single category. And I think what's been fun about the modern football boot industry with power boots and control boots and speed boots and all these different categories is you end up with these boots that are all designed to play the game, but the end result is something that fits and feels very different from one category to the next. But now we have Nike kind of blending all the categories together where they're all about the same weight and they all have aggressive traction and they're all tight fitting and they're all responsive and they're all sock-like. And the Tiempo, it was the last holdout in like something that was just a little bit different, that classic style of football boot, and it isn't that anymore. It's you could make the argument that the Tiempo Legend 8 is it could have been a TechCraft variation of the Phantom Vision.
It could. I mean, I could put it on and you could easily fool me that it was the case.
Yeah.
Remove the stupid it's not even a Flyknit color on the Vision. Remove the stupid knit color on the Vision. Slap on a leather upper, and this could easily be that.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that to me is a problem as a consumer that I have a hard time, even as a boot nerd through 15 years. I mean, I have a hard time separating the full boots that Nike have on offer. Yes, Mercurial kind of stands out, but it can't be the only boot that has a specific USP from Nike. So I'm a little bit confused, simply.
Yeah, I think that where they screwed up is that the leather is probably the least important factor in how the boot feels. When it should be the most important.
What's even, it's just weird because this leather is soft. Like we're talking super high quality premium leather here. I saw the images. I think we all saw the images, and I thought, okay, that it looks a bit weird. The leather, 3D pressed. It has to be stiff. It has to be like the grains looked a little rough, and I didn't expect much, but I got it in my hand. I was like, damn. This is proper soft. And then I got it on my foot. It was like, this doesn't make any sense. Because it wants to do so many things, but I think it wants to do too much to really excel at any of the things it wants to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just too much of a generalized boot to please as many people as possible, when I have other boots that can easily do that.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think it's just one too many things. But I guess for comparison, because what a lot of people like whenever a new boot comes out is they want to hear what it's like. And I've heard people compare the looks of the boot to the Magista Opus, either the 1 or the 2 version 2. It does have that vibe to it. I think mainly down to the texturing more than anything. Doesn't really feel like either of those boots at all.
No, not at all.
But to me, it kind of has a little bit of a vibe from the CTR 360 line, a little bit. It's kind of reminiscent of that. But it really reminded me most of the Tiempo Legend 5, but just with more.
I knew you'd say it.
more stuff going on. Like the Legend 5 to me, much nicer touch. That was really the last pure Tiempo in terms of just the leather being the star of the show. And it was flawed when it came to responsiveness and flawed in a lot of ways. Not anywhere near when it comes to objective performance what we got from the 6, 7, and 8. But to me, it's my personal favorite Tiempo model of all time.
I am close to agreeing with you. I seem to do this every time we do the podcast at least once. That was twice then. Really tremendously mess up my English. But I tend to agree with you. This is also one of the better Tiempos in my book because of here you also have a very, very thin leather upper. And there's no bullshit. But the thing is, you don't slap 3 layers underneath for the sake of it. And this just means that you get the true leather feel and a very, very, you get the plushness, the softness, and the padded feel on the ball, the elegance that leather offers, but it's still close and sharp enough because the leather package is so thin that it feels very sharp and nimble on the ball as well. Very, very good shout. And the only, obviously it feels a little bit like they looked at the leather 5 and then thought, okay, that we need the quilting, right? We just don't want to use seams because seams compress the leather, makes it harder. So let's not do that. And let's just get the look from that.
Yes, let's heat press it and make it harder that way. Because like I watched your video and you started talking about how they didn't use stitching because stitching compresses the leather and it makes it harder. So instead they just used heat to compress the leather to create this diamond shape that, let's be real, because I think a lot of people will be tricked into thinking that this diamond pattern is something you can actually feel. You cannot feel it at all. And once you put the boots on your feet, the leather stretches to a point where it almost smooths out the upper completely. And again, there's absolutely no benefit to the diamond aspect other than just looking different.
No, there isn't. And that's the thing. I also expected to have a little bit more of a tactile feeling when I touch the ball because there is, there are a few, you can feel the edges when you kind of run your hand over it. But on the ball, it might as well just be a completely flat surface for all it's worth for me. I just wanted to point out the Legend 4 here as well, the Elites, of course, which was, for me, the best Tiempo because the leather was ever so slightly thicker than on the Legend 5, but where they also used this quilting. And this, for me, was the pinnacle of what a Legend should be. It's not the lightest boot in the world, no. It's not the most responsive boot in the world, no. But it had a really, really lovely balance between comfort and touch. And fit. It feels elegant. The touch is very elegant. You just feel like a flipping boss when you wear these because of how they fit, how they feel on your foot, and how you feel on the ball, and because of how they look. Obviously,
No, but that's the best example of, okay, let's make the kangaroo leather the star of the show, but let's throw in the tech. It's got the fly wire, which does take away from the softness for the most part. It makes it stiffer through the midfoot, but you're getting the performance out of that. So there's always a trade-off when it comes to adding structure to such a soft material. You get the carbon fiber sole plate. Realistically, they can mess around with the sole plate all they want. As long as the leather is proper, no one's going to be mad, right? So again, they focused on everything else about the Tiempo Legend 8, and then, oh yeah, it has to be leather. Let's make sure that that's there.
But let's play with the thought here for a minute that they actually took out the Quadfit mesh in the Legend 8. Do you think it would be more Tiempo-ish, and would you like it more for what it would be?
Personally, I feel like I would like it better. It wouldn't be as responsive at all, and they would probably have to do something else for the sake of structure. Because I don't think that the diamond pattern really adds any structure to the upper at all.
No.
So they'd have to do something else. For me personally,
it would be the Wild
really
West of your foot just moving all over the place if they didn't add something. Yeah, you're right.
Like what I would, and again, I don't know if this is feasible by any means at all. I'm not a Nike designer, but Nike, if you're watching, this is personally what I would have probably tried to have done. I would have gotten rid of the Flyknit tunnel thing because I think that's ridiculous. I think that the Flyknit through the tongue area, just filling in the middle part, is a great idea. Because it really does wrap your foot perfectly. It doesn't slide around.
And it feels good.
Mm-hmm. It's a great idea. They introduced it on the Legend 7. It still feels good on the Legend 8. But the tunnel thing, adding more bulk underneath your foot and on the medial side, stupid. The Quadfit mesh, I think, is a good fit for this boot because of it not adding rigidity to the soft leather upper. But I would have only done the Quadfit through the midfoot. So let's say from the top lace hole to like the fifth lace hole, and then you end it. So almost the opposite of what they did in the Legend 7. Get rid of any structure through the toes. Let that just be focused on being soft and molding to your feet, and then have the added structure from the Quadfit through the midfoot. And just those are your layers. Leather, liner on the leather, Quadfit through the midfoot, done deal.
Easy peasy. Lemon squeezy. I totally agree with you. So where would you like rank this in terms of Tiempo since Legend 4?
It's objectively, it's one of the best ones.
Yes.
And it's comfortable.
Uh-huh.
But it's, in terms of touch, arguably the worst one. Arguably. It just in terms of feel, like the sensation of feeling the ball, I feel like it might be last place. Because for me, I like the 5 the best, even though it's not objectively the best. I think you can make a strong argument for the Legend 4 Elite. That's an amazing boot. 6 I don't think was really good. 6 was also really, like, it's been a good line, and there's nothing, again, I don't want to say that the Legend 8 is bad, but, and I think this kind of transitions us into the next thing, is like, how does it compare to its competition? Forget about past Tiempos, because you can't buy those anymore. Why should you buy the Legend 8 over other options out there? Like
we have the Regular 3. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult for a €220 boot to compare against the MIJ Regular 3. I mean, it's almost not fair. But we can also talk about the elite version of the Regular 3, which is considerably cheaper. There's also the Copa 19 Plus, and of course, cheaper than all of them, the Puma King. I mean, how does the Legend 8 stack up against those, do you feel? And this is actually a question we got from one of the guys out there. So just to give a shout out to, let me see in my notes here, to Hernan.
Good question. I think, like, if we're talking objective performance, the Tiempo is as light as all of them. It is as responsive, if not more so, than all of them. The traction is as aggressive as all of them. They're comfortable. Like they do everything really well. So as a performance product, you could rank it at number 1, and I'm not going to be mad about that. But when it comes to what makes a leather boot special, for me, top of that list in terms of feel is probably the Copa 19 Plus, just because it really doesn't feel like any other boot that I've ever worn. Number 2, I have to put the Mizunos, just because that is, for me, if you want an all-around performance product with incredible leather, arguably the best leather you can buy, that's the one to get. And then the Puma King Platinum is really, really good. It's a leather Mercurial. It's arguably what the Tiempo should have been this time around rather than what they made it into. So for me personally, it's hard for me to say that would be the 4th place boot, but it might be. The Tiempo might be the 4th place boot. In terms of just feel for the ball from a leather football boot, it's the worst one.
I totally agree with that list. I have a hard time really separating the Copa 19 Plus and the Regular 3 because they give you different things. But I agree that, for a leather boot, the Legend 8 would be number 4. And it's a funny thing because, if you take the King Platinum and the Legend 8 and compare them to each other, the Legend 8 feels like the more well put together boot. It's simply there's simply been more finesse going into making this. It feels more rounded and it feels more premium, to be honest. Of course, it's also slightly more expensive, but still on your foot, the King Platinum just gives you something that the Legend 8 doesn't, because this feels like a leather boot and you still get that very sharp, crisp touch on the ball. And while responsiveness is not its strong suit, it's okay. I can live with it from a performance perspective where, I just don't get the same vibes from the Legend 8. Again, it's weird to say this because, as you say, objectively, it's a great performing boot. It's a great performing boot. But it just doesn't feel as right as the other leather boots out there.
Yeah.
And I'd rather pay the extra money to get the Copa 19 Plus or the Regular 3, or even pay less money and get the Puma Kings. Oh, and that just hurts my feelings because I've always loved the Tiempo.
Yeah.
Right?
No, but you know what? You said it best in that the King it's not as responsive. I'm not sure that it's even as light. It's arguably not as good quality.
It's lighter, actually, but never mind.
Is it technically lighter?
Yeah,
but
it is.
It does that one thing that it's the reason why you buy a leather boot. It does that one thing right. And like, I don't need my leather boot to be the most responsive boot on the market. If that's what you're after, just buy a different boot. There's
Exactly. There's tons of boots out there. If you want a responsive boot, you can go and get a Venom or a Vapor or an X19.1 or a Nemesis or something else. There's so much out there. So the one thing that leather boots have left is the feel and the touch, the uniqueness of leather. Just keep it, man. Come on.
It's been the only unique category of football boots. And Nike just turned it into the same thing as everything else. Like, a car is a car and a boat is a boat. Don't try to make the boat car. And that's what they tried to do.
but they made a very good car.
They made a very good boat car.
Yeah, but it is a very good, even if we just classify it as a car, it's a very good car. Because it's a very good football boot. Overall, it just doesn't, okay. Let's close it there. I think we completely agree on it. It's a good boot. It just doesn't feel as a Tiempo that we would like it to be.
You know what I will say, though, just to end this, because I don't want this to come across as negative. I think that if you are, because they're marketing this as a defender's boot this time around for the most part, it's a little bit bulkier than I was expecting it to be.
Should we just both establish, by the way, should we both establish that the whole boots by position thing is ridiculous? Don't listen to it, but I know what you're going to say, and I think you're right. Go ahead, sorry.
Right? It's a little bit bulkier than I was expecting it to be. And I think out of any modern football boot you can buy right now, if you value protection, the Tiempo Legend 8 is a pretty solid option. Like, it's arguably the most safe top-end football boot that you can buy right now.
Yeah. I've never thought about it that way, actually, but is it?
I just feel like if you were to get stepped on and there's 3 layers of material that can individually slide around against your foot, that's going to disperse a lot of that pressure. And I don't know. There's some merit to the layering. If protection is
I feel
important.
your logic. I'm just thinking, would I really, if I was to go fly into a tackle, would I really put on a Legend 8? Personally, I probably wouldn't. It just doesn't give me that feel of being like a protective boot. You might be right. I just probably would jump into a Tequila or a Future or even these or Copa 19 Plus, even stuff that has thicker uppers. Basically, anyway, you might be right. I was just surprised at that statement.
We also didn't mention it. They have ACC, so I mean,
yeah, I mean they're bound to be good. One other thing I wanted to mention is that we've actually seen this whole thing where the tongue piece wraps underneath the outsole. It was on the Mizuno Replica too. I'm just saying it, putting it out there. So innovation. Anyway,
they didn't call it a tunnel.
That's true. They should have patented the shit out of it. They would have made a lot of bank now. Anyways, so big shout out to Hernan for that question we transitioned so elegantly into. But let's have a question from Condescending Quotation Marks, which is an awesome name. Hey Jay and Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you can name one footballer / manager / legend / boot designer to join you in the podcast, who would it be? First question to him or her, and would you quote him / her in ACC? Yes, of course, to the latter. Of course we would. That's kind of, you have to do that in order to be on the podcast. But player, manager, legend, boot designer, who would you take? Go.
Okay, well, I think any boot designer would be cool to talk to for the most part. Especially in the modern industry. It's such, there's so much variety out there. But for me, I think a really fun interview and would be good on a podcast, I think Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Every interview I've ever seen of him, he's great. He's great.
Zlatan is a legend. That would be a lot of fun. And also because Zlatan, follows the vibe of the Boot Nerds podcast where we say what we think, right?
Yeah, so I feel like if we asked him about the boots he's worn throughout his career, we'd get some honest answers.
Oh, very, yeah. So Zlatan, if you're watching, and you're down, well, we're free that day. Also, any boot designer out there, if you're watching and you're free that day, we're down. So let's do something. I would like to actually speak to Dennis Dekovic. For those of you who don't know who he is, he's a guy who played a pivotal role in creating the Lotto Shiro Gravity, the first laceless boot back in 2006. Then he also was a very big front runner on the whole Nike Magista Superfly 4 Flyknit Dynamic Fit Color project from Nike, and now he's at Adidas. So a guy who's been around, who's had a big hand in some very big innovations, and I just love to hear his story, like how he sees things, and seeing that basically what he did in 2006 and 2014 is everywhere these days, knit and laceless, right? Mm-hmm. Would be an interesting topic.
Wasn't he on the team for Hypervenom Phantom 1 as well?
I think he must have been, yeah. He must have been.
I remember seeing his name a lot around when those came out.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. So great guy. Met him a couple of times, but would be really interesting to hear, his side of things, and how he saw that. So Dennis, if you're watching this and you're down with free that day as well. So yeah, good question. But let's get Zlatan. That would be fun. Alex Nunez, what is the well, I should really go home. What is the next big evolution in football boots in the near future? In 2014, we had the first ever knitted boots. Yes. And now can we see new boot tech in the coming years? Yes, I think I get the question. What's the next big deal? We have made a podcast about it, but I just thought, have you had any visions since that?
Like predicting the future.
Yes, not the boots.
Yeah, well, you said vision, so I wanted to throw in future.
Funny.
Boot nerd jokes.
Yeah.
Not good. I think
that was a legendary joke you made there.
right on Tiempo.
Yeah. Stop it.
Okay, last one.
We need one more.
All right. I think it's gonna be it could be one of two things. It would be something around molding the boot to your foot, which I think is difficult to do because that would require people to actually be able to do it properly. So that's tricky. I think the next big thing is going to be 3D printing. I think we're going to see something with that.
Yeah, that feels like the logical step. That or adaptive lockdown. I mean, I'm still on that. I think Nike's gonna really work with Quadfit mesh to make it one day intelligent. I think that's coming. So
intelligent mesh. We've got speed mesh. Now we just need intelligent mesh.
Wow. So it's both fast and intelligent. It's going to take over the world. You heard it here first. I'll take 10%. Top boxing. What city-inspired design do you think would make the coolest limited edition boot? I'm thinking Tokyo or Mexico City. Before you say anything, I think we all know the answer.
I'll let you answer.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Oh,
come on!
I had no idea you were going to say that.
Come on, just a little bit of shameless self-promotion here. Copenhagen, of course. But with that said, I think Tokyo would be a very good shout because Tokyo's just cool. Yeah. Neon lights, history. I mean, Tokyo's just cool.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not a world traveler. I'm not much of a geography guy, but yeah, Tokyo seems like a good answer.
I mean, I've never been to Mexico City, but it just doesn't strike me as having, a thing as Tokyo would have. But maybe he is from Mexico City. I don't know. Anyway, Rubens Brown, return of Kanga-Lite 2.0. I guess that's the entire question, but I guess he wants us to discuss if it's going to happen and if it's like not only if it's plausible, but also if it makes sense for Nike to do it.
I think it makes sense for them to do it. And like it wouldn't be, I know it's very early to say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tiempo Legend 9, should that ever happen, was some variation of Kanga-Lite rather than kangaroo leather.
God forbid. No.
It could happen. It's not out of the realm of possibility. The fact that Nike has kind of ditched it for a number of years now leads me to believe that it's dead forever. And I really do feel, while Kanga-Lite was great in its run, I think you could always make the argument that the kangaroo leather Legend was always a better touch anyways. Potentially, depending on what your opinion is. I don't know. Just faking real leather rather than just doing real leather, the concept doesn't appeal to me as much.
And I think also that what Kanga-Lite did back in the day was to give you the same benefits of a leather boot, so a nice touch and especially the softness that Nike can now provide with Flyknit, which is much more, should we say, moldable or programmable. They can do with it whatever they want. They can just make different knit shapes. So it's much more, what should we say? It's much more adaptive to work with. It's much easier to do whatever you have in your mind with Flyknit than it was with Kanga-Lite. And Kanga-Lite, as you say, it served a purpose. It was great, but I don't really see the reasoning for bringing it back, because now you can do stuff with kangaroo leather that you could only do with Kanga-Lite back in the day. So technology has taken leather to the point where we can do stuff that we could do with Kanga-Lite, but just with the real deal. And isn't that better?
It is better. And I think it's worth noting too that like I feel like the treatment process, or at least the manufacturing process of leather boots, has come a long way in the last 10 years, where you can wear a leather boot, get them completely soaked, and they dry out more or less like normal synthetic boots would now. They're not like Copa Mondials where they're wet for the rest of the week.
No, they're basically just like Copa 19 Pluses, where you basically have you have a leather upper fused with a knitted upper, and it's just fused into one. I mean, this is how far we've come where they've actually have a contoured leather upper that we've come a long way, and you can do so many things with leather now. You can even glue on leather. That wasn't really possible before. Like you can glue on synthetics. I don't see Kanga-Lite coming back in a 2.0 unless something really wicked happens.
Yep. Rip Kanga-Lite.
Rest in peace, my man. Teamgeist with a solid question here. Do you think it's a mistake from Nike that the new Mercurial Superfly will be so similar to the old one? The most popular and hyped Superfly was the 4th, 5th, and 6th. It was the most popular and hyped Superfly was the 4th. 5 and 6 were unable to generate a similar hype, and I don't think the Superfly 7 will. Could the Mercurial line become relevant in the next couple of years? Now, with that said, there can only be speculation about the Superfly 7 or whatever they're going to call it. They might call it this. If we follow Puma's logic, they might call it the Superfly 171. So, of course, unless anything's official, we can't comment on it. But working with the Superfly, I think we've kind of discussed it before that the Superfly these days is more of a complement to the Vapor. It's just an alternative to the Vapor if you want something else, because it's essentially the same boot just with a higher color. It's just a different offering. It doesn't have something unique, and maybe it would be time for Nike to let the Superfly take a nap for 2-3 years until they had something properly unique to bring to the Superfly that was worth the extra money, and so they could tell the story around this awesome naming and awesome, basically storytelling they've set up around it, instead of just having a higher colored Vapor. Which for me will also it will always be the stronger name of the two, unless the Superfly has that extra premium level to it. And maybe that was the reason that especially 6 hasn't been as significantly popular or more popular than the Vapor for me.
Yeah, no, I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. The Superfly was always cool. I think so. It was always cool because it was the experimental version of the Mercurial. Right? It's like, let's introduce Flywire and carbon fiber. And I mean, I think it's unfair to say that the Superfly 5 and 6 couldn't generate the same hype as the Superfly 4, given the fact that the Superfly 4 was like the first sock boot along with the Obra. Like, it was so drastically different than anything else. So obviously anything that came after that was going to be, I don't want to say a letdown, but just not on the same level of hype.
I think 5 did all right, actually.
No, 5 was okay. 5 was good. But then again, with 6 and the Vapor 12, they're effectively the exact same thing. So there's a lot less reason to get excited about the Superfly. And I mean, based on what we've seen from pros training and blackouts, it looks like it's going to be the same thing this next time around, where the Vapor and the Superfly are more or less the same. That sucks. I agree with you. I think if they took a couple years off with the Superfly and brought it back as something that we've never really seen before, the next big technology in football boots maybe. But I don't think they're going to do that based on the fact that they really seem to have structured their marketing over the last several years around Vapor and Superfly. Like Cristiano Ronaldo going from Superfly back into Vapor now, after really probably the most important part of his career in terms of being in the public eye on social media.
Wait, what?
Right. What do you mean? What?
Ronaldo going back to what?
Going back to the Vapor.
Is he?
Well, I'm saying if they did kill the Superfly and he went back to the Vapor,
I was like,
right?
I thought, what on earth did I miss? Did I zone out for a few seconds? Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
I'm down. Yeah.
Right? Because you can look at the history of the Mercurial line, but really the last 5 years, because of the prevalence of social media, the Superfly name, I think, is more recognizable than it ever had been before. So to take a guy like Cristiano Ronaldo out of the Superfly and back into the Vapor, not to say that that's confusing, but I think people expect a Superfly at this point, so it's hard for Nike to take it away.
Absolutely. But maybe it would be for the better of the super, not to devalue the Superfly name, so to speak, to take it away. But another question is, I mean, how much does, looking at all the blackouts out there, how much will they, when they eventually launch, how different do they need to be for the Mercurial to not lose its relevance and its position as one of the best speed boots on the market? I mean, can they pull a Predator 19 Plus and just change a few bits and bobs here and there? Or do they need to like considerably update it and make the tech better for it to still hold its relevance?
Well, no, like Jay, I get what you're saying, but like if we are going to expect the brands, and it seems like the average consumer is expecting more new releases more frequently, if they're going to half of the life cycle of these boots, we cannot expect them to revolutionize the football boot industry every single year, right? It's just not going to happen. Like Nike's been on a 2-year cycle. It looks like they're going to go to a 1 year or a year and a half, which means that we're just going to see less innovation. And look, Adidas is doing it. They basically have a Mark II version of all their boots. It's just a slight upgrade, a slight modification over what they did. And that's really how the Mercurial line has been for a long time. Vapor 1, Vapor 2, kind of just evolution of the same thing, right? Vapor, 6 and 7, kind of the same. Vapor 8 and 9, kind of the same, right? Yeah. It's just Vapor 10 and 11, kind of variations of the same. More differences between those two, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
I get what
you're saying.
They can only change so much before you end up with something like a Tiempo Legend 8, where it's like, okay, now they're just making changes to make changes, and they're ruining what the boot's supposed to be in the first place. Which some people have already argued that they've done by flying it with the Mercurial Vapor. So I think that Nike's really trying to appeal to the average consumer rather than the hardcore guys, which is a bit of a shame, but I understand that logic.
I think that, if as long as everyone else is doing these yearly updates to their 2-year lifespan for the boots, I don't think it's going to make the Mercurial irrelevant. I think it's just mainly following the trend in the market, which is that you need to have new stuff out relatively often. And that's just the way it goes. So as long as Nike keep actually having relevant updates and keep pushing the Mercurial, because it seems like to me that this is now the vessel of, the biggest efforts. This is where the hardcore innovation goes into, because it is the biggest, the most commercially relevant silo, right? So as long as the Mercurial stays the front runner of Nike's innovation and their visions, I don't see it ever becoming irrelevant. No. But of course, it needs to be, they need to take it seriously and not just make lazy updates on the boots, of course.
Yeah, I think it's important. I hate to say it, but I almost feel like the look of the Mercurial is more important than the performance of it at this point, which sucks to say. But I really, if there's one line of football boot that's really untouchable in terms of its popularity, it's the Mercurial line.
Yes, yes.
I'm fairly confident they could put a zipper on the next Mercurial and it would still be popular.
Look, they messed up the whole, I would argue from Vapor 5 to Vapor 5, 6, and 7 and the Superfly 2 and 3 and to some extent also the Superfly 1. They messed up big time. I mean, the products sucked. They were super expensive and people still bought it.
Yeah.
So you can't touch Mercurial. I don't see it really ever becoming irrelevant unless they do something I can't even imagine.
Mercurial line will probably, as long as Nike's in business, there will be a Mercurial line.
Absolutely, yes. And I think with those beautiful words, it is time that we give people's ears and their eyes. I'm sorry, guys. This is just how I look. We give them a rest. If you want to, for some reason, watch more of this phase and also Josh's beautiful phase, you can, of course, at the end of the video, go down and click the playlist or the video that's going to be in the bottom of the screen. See more boot nerds episodes. Basically, we have 24 more. So if you're binge watching, so to speak, you can do that in the bottom of the screen. If you want to see more of what Josh is doing, you can click the subscribe bubble over his face. If you want to see what we're up to at Unisport, you can click the green bubble somewhere over here. But the most important thing for you to click is the Boot Nerds Podcast subscribe button. And then even more importantly, you click the little bell notification button to get a little bling on your phone every time we release a video. What you should also remember is that if you want one of your epic questions answered, you should leave it in the comment section right down below. If you only want to listen to this, there's audio-only versions in the description, and I think that's everything we needed to say. And with that, I am JayMike, and I approve this message.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.
Vi ses. Ha det godt. Hej hej.
I want to know what you're saying so bad.